everyone. Welcome to week 3 of virtual launch for 4th and 5th grade. I know we had a week off here, so if you were one of the lucky ones that had a fall break in the last week or two, I hope you had a nice, relaxing, and fun time, and hope you're ready to jump back into this and get back to learning more about God and learning more about your faith and growing in your faith as we go through virtual launch. So, go ahead and get started. Let's review first what we talked about in our last lesson. So in the last lesson, just to refresh your memory, we actually covered 2 chapters. The first chapter that we covered was about the Blessed Trinity, which if you remember, that's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, 3 divine persons in one God. We talked about that and how that is a mystery. And then the second chapter, we talked about Mary, and we talked about her importance to us and the very special place that she has in the Catholic Church. And we also talked specifically about the apparition of Our Lady of La Salette and why that's important to us at St. Anne's, and learning more about that that special apparition that happened in the 1800s in France. So that was a little bit of a recap of what we talked about in our last lesson. So let's go ahead and jump right into this week's lesson. We're covering 2 chapters again, so I want to go ahead and get started. We are going to be covering chapter 3 and chapter 4 in the book, and then I'm going to make 2 separate videos. So this video is for chapter 3, and then when we're done and you're ready to move on to chapter 4, then you just click on the next video. So let's get started. Chapter 3 is about creation. And let's think about the Nicene Creed that we say on Sundays when we are at Mass. It starts off by saying, I believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. Right? So that maker of heaven and earth part is the little section that we're going to be focusing on for this chapter and the next chapter. So again, talking about creation. Now, you guys are probably familiar with the creation story, right? That's actually probably one of the very first Bible stories that you learned, either when you started in lunch or maybe when you were in preschool, and you learned about how God created the world and created everything in 7 days. Actually, I guess it was technically 6 days, and then he rested on the 7th day. But you learned about how, God created the day and the night, and the sun, the moon, the stars, and the plants, and the animals, and humans, and the water, and the sky, and you've all heard that before, probably many, many times. So we're going to get a little bit more in depth about that, because again, you guys are 4th and 5th graders, you're a little bit older, you can kind of understand more than just God created the world in 7 days. Yay! Which is important, but like I said, you're getting older, so we're going to get a little bit more in depth. So, what does it mean to create something? All right? What does it mean when you create something? You might say, oh, well, it just means you make something, all right? And it could be anything. You could take ingredients and make a pan of brownies. You could, like my son Grant, who's in 5th grade, he loves Legos. He is always creating things out of Legos, buildings, cars, things that he sees. All right, he creates things with Legos. My other son Jacob, who is in 3rd grade, really likes arts and crafts, and he's always creating things out of construction paper and scissors and glitter and glue and markers and everything. He likes to create all kinds of things. He makes up his own board games sometimes. All right, so they both like to create. Those are examples of creating things. But if you think about it, when we create something as humans, we have to have the materials to create the object. So if we're making a pan of brownies, we need to have the flour and the sugar and the eggs and the cocoa powder and the vanilla extract, and then of course, the bowls, the spoons, the ovens. We have to have all those things in order to create a pan of brownies. When Grant is making something out of Legos, he needs to actually have the Legos. He needs to have all the pieces and all the different shapes and the colors and wheels and everything. When Jacob is making something, with arts and crafts, he needs to have, again, like I said, the materials, glue, scissors, construction paper, glitter, sequins, whatever it is that he's using. All right. Now, when God created the universe, he did not need materials to create the universe. He created it out of nothing. He just spoke it and thought it into being. He can do that because he's God. He's all powerful. All right. So that's pretty amazing. So God is really the ultimate creator because he literally created this entire universe and everything that we know out of nothing. Out of nothing. That is why he is called the creator with a capital C, because again, he created everything in the universe out of nothing. All right. That's what we're going to be talking about more in this chapter. All right. And what exactly that means and our responsibility as humans to care for this amazing creation that God has made for us. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's read the chapter first, and then we'll talk about some more about it after we're done reading the chapter. Again, this is chapter 3, and as always, you can choose to read the chapter however you like best. If you would like to listen to me read it out loud, cool. If you would like to read a copy of the pages, again, there's a link underneath this video, underneath the videos, you know where the button is where you can click to find a copy of the chapter pages if you want to print them out or if you want to read them on your computer. If you have a copy of the book at your house, you can certainly read the book on your own. Again, do whatever you prefer. It's totally fine. But for those of us who are listening, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Here we go. Chapter 3, Creator of Heaven and Earth. Create, creator, creation, creature. All of these words go together. They tell us about God, the universe, and ourselves. God is the creator of heaven and earth. This means that he created everything out of nothing. A man may say that he has created a work of art or a line of fashion clothing, but he did not create them out of nothing. He used things that were already around, such as paint or cloth. Only God can truly create. That is, only God can bring something into being from nothing. All that God has made we call creation. That includes both heaven and earth, the physical and the spiritual. Each thing that God has created is a creature. You can see the same root word in create and creature. Creature usually brings to mind a lizard or a spider or something out of a science fiction movie. But an angel is just as much of a creature as a lizard, or a mountain, or a star, or a human. Is God a creature? No. God alone is uncreated. He had no beginning. God is the cause of all creation. A fairy tale is not written by a fairy tale character, but by someone who is outside of the story. In a similar way, God is not part of creation. He is its creator. As we learned in the last chapter, chapter 2, the one about the Blessed Trinity, God did not need to create heaven and earth. But he did, and in his wisdom, he saw that it was good. In his love, he wanted others to enjoy the gift of life. He wanted to give others the chance to know and love him. Not only God the Father, but God the Son and God the Holy Spirit took part in creation. We learn this from the Bible. The Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters, we read in the story of creation, which is found in the book of Genesis. And when speaking of Jesus, God's Son, St. John's Gospel says, all things were made through him. Most people believe in God through faith. But if we take a look at creation and think carefully, our minds can discover many things about God. First, we can learn that there is a God. How could this world have come to be without him? Some people do not believe in God. They think the universe made itself when mindless atoms came together by chance to make the stars and planets. But we know that nothing can make itself. The parts of a computer do not just come together by themselves. Paint dripping on paper does not make itself into a picture of a mountain scene or a field of flowers. It takes an intelligent mind to build a computer or paint a picture. The universe is even more complicated and beautiful. Only the perfect mind of God could have designed it. Not only did God create the world, but he keeps it going according to his plan. You can see how plants, animals, minerals, and the weather seem to work together in harmony. Yet we know that they do not think about working together. The earth does not say, I think I should turn on my axis so that there can be day and night. A squirrel does not think to himself, oh, it's a good thing I forgot to dig up some of those acorns I bury. They will grow into oak trees someday. In his wisdom and love, God directs all of his creation. Many people do not stop to admire the things God has created or to thank him for them. Knowing that God made the world and made it for us should make us see the world in a new light. God made heaven and earth for you. They exist to remind you of God and to show you how great and good he is. He wants you to enjoy them and be grateful for them. Next time you visit a zoo or see a wildlife program on TV, think about God. Remember that he made monkeys, raccoons, and bear cubs funny and entertaining for a reason. The reason is that he knew you would enjoy them that way. God knows that even little things, like the first snow of winter or the first robin of spring, can give us joy. That is partly why he made them. God is the Father of all creation and the loving Father of each of us. He made the world for us. God has given us rule over a part of creation so that we may make a right and wise use of it. That is why it is wrong for us to abuse or waste any of God's creation and gift to us. All right. So, a lot to learn there in that one short chapter. So, as we talked about before we read the chapter, one of the important things to keep in mind is that God is the ultimate creator, because God created the universe and created the world and everything in it out of nothing. All right, he didn't have like, oh, here's some air, I'm going to make this. Oh, and here's a sun over here. No, he made it all out of nothing. The other thing that I think is really important for us to remember is that God did not create this world and this universe because he needed it. He didn't need it. He created it because he loves us. He actually made the world and everything in it for us, for as humans, for several reasons. Number one, because he loves us, and he wanted us to have a beautiful, wonderful, fascinating, amazing place to live. And also because he wanted us to be able to learn about him by looking at creation, right? So what are some of the things that we can learn about God by looking at creation, right? Well, first of all, we know that God is powerful, right? Again, he created this whole world out of nothing. That's pretty powerful. But then think about some of the things in creation that themselves are powerful. You know, you've got mountains, some, waterfalls, oceans. They're all very powerful things. Some animals are very powerful. Okay, so that shows us that God is powerful. By looking at creation, we can also learn that God is wise. God has a lot of wisdom. Because as we read in the chapter, God has a plan and a purpose for every single thing in nature. And he designed it all to work together in harmony. So just like you have all the different parts that make up a computer, for example, and some of them are going to be big, like the screen or the keyboard. But then if you think about it, you have all those really tiny parts on the inside that that help the computer to work. And again, you put them all together and you get this complicated machine that we call a computer. Well, thinking about how many large and small parts all have to work together harmoniously in just something like a computer, then if you think about how big the world is and how many pieces and components of creation have to work together, I mean, that it's kind of mind-boggling. And so that shows us how wise God is, that he has the mind and the ability to create it and make it all work together. And he's got a plan for every part of nature. Everything from, like I said, something as big as the ocean to the tiniest little microscopic, bacteria or cell in an organism. He's got a plan for all those, and they all work together in his creation. So again, that shows us that God has a lot of wisdom. We also can learn, also from studying creation, we can learn that God is beautiful. God is beautiful. Think about how many times have you ever seen something out in nature, either an animal or maybe, if you've been on a vacation into the beach and you see maybe a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset over the ocean. Maybe you've been to the mountains, and the mountains can be really beautiful just by themselves, depending on the time of day and even the time of the year. Think about now, we're getting into the season. It's October, so we're getting into fall, and the leaves are starting to change colors. And think about how beautiful that is when those leaves start to turn from green to the red and orange and yellow and brown, and it's really beautiful. So there's a lot of things in the world that are beautiful, and that tells us that God is beautiful because God created this beauty for us to enjoy. And finally, we also learn about God from looking at creation that God is love. Because again, remember, he made this world not for himself. He didn't do it because he needed it. He made this world for us because he loves us. And he wants us to have this beautiful, amazing, fascinating place to live. So, it's pretty cool. God made this whole world for you and me and every other human out there. That's pretty amazing if you think about it, right? The other thing I think is really important, and that, again, you've probably heard this before when you were younger, is that when you read the story of creation in Genesis, after God makes each part of creation, he says the same thing over and over again. He says, it is good. It is good. It is good. It is good. So, and I think when we're little, we don't really think about what that means. But now that we're a little older, again, that means that everything God creates is good. It's inherently good. That means you, because God created you, you are good. Right? God created you and said, that's good. He's good. She's good. All right? Pretty amazing when you think about that. God said that about you and every other person, all right? And everything else that he's created in the world. So yeah, you're not just some mindless thing that God doesn't really care about. God knows you. He created you for a purpose. He's got a plan for your life. He's got a purpose for your life. And when he made you, he said you were good. That's pretty amazing. That is really amazing. When you really kind of stop and think about it, it's pretty powerful. All right? So like I said, again, God created the universe and everything in creation to help us learn about him, to help us know that he is powerful, he is wise, he is beautiful, and he is full of love. All right? The other thing that we have that God gave us as humans, he gave us a very special role and a very special responsibility, and that is that we are to be good stewards of creation. And a steward is a caretaker. And again, this is something you probably learned about when you were younger, and you talk about the story of creation that's in the book of Genesis. After God created people, he gave people the responsibility to take care of this beautiful world that he made. So that means we have the responsibility to care for the planet, to care for the animals, to care for the water, the forests, and all the other beautiful natural things in the world. That's our responsibility to take care of it, because remember, God made us unique and special as humans, and that we have the ability to know God, all right? And so he didn't give that gift to any of the other pieces of creation or on the earth. It's just us. So he gave us that special responsibility to care for the earth. That means we need to protect it, care for it, but also we have the responsibility to use the earth's resources wisely and to not be wasteful. Right? Pope Francis has actually written a letter or a paper about our responsibility as humans to care for the world, right? So that's something that, think about it. I mean, it can be something as simple as recycling, which maybe a lot of you probably already do that at your house. It can be things like, simple things like, you turn off the water when you're not using it. Like when you're brushing your teeth, don't leave the water running. It could also be something like if your family is looking for a pet, that you adopt a pet from an animal shelter, right? Because again, you're rescuing or you're saving that part of creation, that kitten or that puppy or that bird or lizard or whatever it is that you're adopting. That is part of God's creation, and by adopting it, you're promising to take care of that one little tiny piece of creation. All right, so again, there are big ways and small ways that we can be good stewards of the earth. All right, so in this chapter, we talked about kind of the physical parts of creation that we can see. So the earth, the plants, animals, humans, the oceans, the skies, all that good stuff. In the next chapter, we are going to be talking about the part of creation that is invisible, the part we can't see. We're going to be talking about angels. All right, so in the next video, we're going to cover chapter 4. All right, so I will see you back over there on the next video for chapter 4 in just a few minutes. All right, bye guys.